All right, fifth grade, I'm going to teach you about the metric system. And before we even get started, I just want to tell you that this system is way easier and it is what the whole entire world uses to measure everything except for the United States. We use something a little bit different because we measure things in rulers. We've got feet and inches. Well, the metric system is how the rest of the world chooses to measure everything. So we've got millimeters, centimeters, meters, and kilometers. So I'm going to attempt to hopefully give a good explanation of how the system works and how you can find out how much of different objects or how different lengths are, and how to convert them back and forth. So starting, I like to pull up this visual here to show you guys the difference between all of the different um, systems of measurement. So the smallest um, type of measurement that you can have is a millimeter or a milligram or a milliliter. Anything with milli means really, 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 really small. So if you look at a meter stick, these lines like this, these are all millimeters. So if you think about like the distance from your house to McDonald's, how many millimeters are going to be in that? There's going to be a ton because there's lots of little tiny tick marks to show. Okay? The next biggest, or I guess the second smallest, would be centimeters. So centimeter is one of the bigger tick marks like this. So it's slightly bigger than a millimeter, and it's about the size of from your tip of your finger to your knuckle. That's about a centimeter, and that's how I learned to measure it. So the next one is a meter, and so if you've ever seen like a meter stick, like a big long meter stick that people use to measure about 2.5 or 3 feet tall, that's a meter. That's the base of that's like the standard unit that they use to measure. We use millimeters to measure really, really small. We use meters to measure regular stuff, and then we'll get into this is called a kilometer. And there's a couple other measurements in between meter and kilometer, but we'll go over that later. A kilometer, you measure big distances with that. Like the distance around a park or the distance of a race. Those are all measured in kilometers. So if it has kilo, kilo means big. So anything with kilo in front of it is a big unit. And anything with anything super, super tiny, milli, is going to be the smallest. So this is our big to small system here. And everything's in a multiple of 10. So there's 10 millimeters in 1 centimeter. There's 100 centimeters in a meter and 1,000 meters in a kilometer. So we're going to go over and kind of explain how we convert from millimeters to centimeters and all that fun stuff. So going back over here, I'm going to erase this really quick. All right. So going back, how a quick way to remember the different types of measurements and how they go from big to small is King Henry died by drinking chocolate milk. So anything with a kilo in front of it, our kilometer, our kilogram, our kiloliter is going to be the biggest unit. And the M is going to be milli to small. As you notice on this chart, and I liked this chart really, if you want to go to a smaller unit, you're going to move to the decimal to the right or multiply. So if you're going to go from a kilometer to a millimeter, you're going to multiply. If you're going from something small to something big, you're going to move the decimal point to the left or divide. So I'm going to kind of teach you guys how to do that. So we kind of already talked about this in the picture I was showing you. So what's bigger, a meter or a millimeter? So a meter is going to be larger, right? Because you've got a meter stick, and the millimeters are the bottom of the scale here, and the meter would be right here at the base unit. So if I'm going from a big unit, from meters to millimeters, would I multiply or divide? Well, let's go back up to this chart here. And it said, if I'm going from big units to small units, I'm going to multiply because I'm going from here and I want to go down to millimeters, so I'm going to be multiplying if I'm going to the right there. So I'm going to actually say right here, multiply. If I'm going from millimeters, or I'm going up the ladder, millimeters up to, say, kilometers, or in this case, meters, I'm going to do the opposite, which the opposite of multiplication is division. So if I go down here, I would put divide here. And then I give a couple examples here. For example, if I'm going from a kilometer, remember km stands for kilometer, to that, I'm going to multiply because I'm trying to get small. So I'm going to multiply by 1,000 and we'll go over all that. This is another nice chart that still has that handy way to remember that the King Henry, those two are at the top because they're big, kilo, and then the last smallest would be milli. I'm going to go ahead and underline this. So if you say meter, gram, or liter, that's the same as the base. All right, hopefully I'm making sense so far. I hope I'm not rambling too much. Okay, so these are where things are gonna get a little bit trickier. So we're gonna go from 15 meters and we wanna change it into millimeters. The first question I have to ask myself, am I going from big to small or small to big? If I look up here, the meter's higher up on the ladder than the millimeters. So I am going from big to small. And if you remember correctly, when we go from big to small, we multiply. Okay, so the question I have to ask myself, well, what am I going to multiply 15 by to figure out how many millimeters I have? So if I scroll up here and I look down here, everything's in a base 10. So actually, this chart helps really well, actually. It says I'm going to times 10 times 100 or times 1,000 because I'm at millimeters. So I'm actually going to times 15 times 1,000 because I had to go down 3 times. So 15 times 1,000 equals 15,000. So that is going to be the answer to how many millimeters are in 15 meters. Let's do another problem together, and then hopefully you'll be able to do this confidently on your own. If you're still confused, I will help you through it. Okay, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to see, I am going from now millimeters to meters. So I'm now going from small to big. So if I'm going from small to big, I'm going up the ladder. I'm going to be doing the opposite of what I just did, and the opposite of multiplication is division. So scrolling down here, I'm going to be dividing, instead of multiplying by 1,000 like I did here, I'm going to be dividing by 1,000. If I don't know how to divide by 1,000, I can also move my decimal 3 places to the left. So let's do that. My decimal's imaginary at the end of my number. I'm going to move it 3 spots because 1,000 has 3 zeros. And I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. So 2,040 millimeters is the same as 2.04 meters. Okay, let's do one more because this is fun and I like doing this. All right. So we're going to do kilometers now into meters. First thing I have to ask myself, is a kilometer bigger or smaller than a meter? And if I remember my mnemonic here, kilo is at the top. So if I'm going from bigger to smaller, I'm multiplying. Okay, so I'm going from kilometers down to meters here. So I'm going to be making 3 steps on my chart. Instead of dividing by 1,000, I'm going to be multiplying because I'm going from big to small. And in this case, I go down 1, 2, 3 times, 10 to the third is 1,000. All right, so let's check that out down here. So I'm going from, I'm doing 8.6 kilometers into meters. So I'm going to go 8.6 times 1,000. And I move my decimal to the right 3 times because I'm multiplying. I go 1, 2, 3. And I place my decimal at the end, and I get 8,600 meters, which would make sense. There's going to be a lot more meters in kilometers than the other way around. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pause there. If you have any questions, just let me know, and I can help you out. I hope this video was somewhat helpful. This is kind of a confusing concept, but rest assured, this is the hardest day of the week, and the rest of this is just going to get easier and easier for you. So good luck, and if you have any questions, you know how to contact me.